Good afternoon and welcome to our ProEd conversation today. My name is John Green with Association Member Benefits Advisors. I'll introduce a couple of our special guests here today and my co-host. Today we're talking about emergency transportation issues in Tennessee. And PET, the Professional Educators of Tennessee, and AMBA, Association Member Benefits Advisors, partner together to make sure that you have the best in your professional development as well as your personal development and how your benefits work and the benefits that you get through ProEd of Tennessee to make sure that you have the best of all worlds with what you have in the schoolhouse, as well as what you can give through PET. We talked a little bit about some housekeeping details to start. Just a couple of reminders. All participants are in a listen-only mode. If you have a question, feel free to drop it into the Q&A section or in the chat, and we'll answer those questions as we go periodically throughout our conversation today. You'll also notice down at the bottom right-hand corner a QR code on our webinar today. Feel free to take your smartphone, open up your camera feature and hover over that QR code. A little form will pop up, and you can request information about the topic we talk about today or topics that we have talked about in the past and different products and services that AMBA and PET offer for all educators, whether they're active or retired in the state of Tennessee. So grab a pen and paper today, and we'll go ahead and get started with today's webinar. And just a quick reminder, my name is John Green with Association Member Benefits Advisors. I live a little bit north of Houston with my wife, who is a second grade elementary school teacher. She teaches in the same school that she and my three children all went to in their elementary years. And for the better part of my 30-year career, I've spent time with active educators, helping them understand what their retirement years are going to look like. And that's important to ProEd. Not only developing you while you're in the classroom, but helping you understand what your retirement years are going to look like. And so I appreciate the opportunity to join you today and to remind you a little bit about what ProEd does on your behalf. Professional Educators of Tennessee is a nonpartisan organization that advocates on behalf of active and retired educators in the state of Tennessee. Their goals are to help preserve pay, classroom environment, and health benefits that you receive now and prepare you for your retirement years and keep you connected through events all across the state for your own professional development, as well as with like-minded educators who support other educators in the state of Tennessee. And then to partner with AMBA to offer important exclusive benefits and discounts that you can't get anywhere else in your career, even in the schoolhouse as well. So we're going to talk about some of those things. But I want to introduce my co-host to you today. At AMBA, we serve 70 plus associations very similar to the Professional Educators of Tennessee all across the country. Active and retired public servants in the education field, state employment, firefighters, police officers, nurses, and the like. And in Tennessee, our leader is Eric Cannon. Eric, if you want to unmute yourself real quickly and tell folks just briefly about your Tennessee connection and your role in the state of Tennessee.
Well, you know, John, Tennessee's near and dear to me. I am a Tennessee volunteer and grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. My father was an educator for 26 years in Knoxville at Bearden High School, and born and raised and military veteran as well as I am. So he was Army, I was Air Force, but loved all my experiences growing up in Knoxville and my experiences at the University of Tennessee. So to all my Tennessee brethren and sisters, go Vols. But as it relates to my relationship with AMBA and working with school systems, I've been fortunate to be working with educators since 1995. And in those travels, really understanding the plight of educators in the state of Tennessee, with my dad teaching 26 and my aunt taught for 30. And so, as you well know, over the years, benefits have evolved and not necessarily for the better. There used to be a time with disability insurance where educators could file a claim and those benefits would pay immediately. Then over time, it evolved where they had to use up all their sick days before they could draw their disability. And then when it came to workers' compensation, the length of time it took for those claims to be paid out, as opposed to maybe other programs that we're fortunate to be able to share with our members. So in my travels through Tennessee and helping to grow the memberships and helping to advocate on their behalf about the value of an association that has their back, a program that they can call their own, where the revenue goes right back into the state and helps further the advancement for education and all the programs therein of. we're really excited to bring that message to Tennessee, letting them know there is an alternative outside of other associations that may be in place, but none of them are anything like ProEd for the state of Tennessee and those educators. And then, of course, the opportunity to be able to share, like you mentioned, John, the discounts that are available by being a member of ProEd, and then the opportunity to take advantage of exclusively endorsed programs by the association is second to none. And then, of course, when it comes to pricing to be a member, it is literally a fraction of a cost of the cost to all of the members, whether you're a certified educator or whether you're a support staff, whether you work in the cafeteria or whether you are a custodial member. Everybody's treated the same. So really excited to get that message out and do everything we can to continue to support the growth of ProEd with the memberships across the state and programs that they could be proud to have while they're active as well as while they're retired.
Exactly. Eric, thank you very much. Eric is serving as our co-host today because he's got firsthand knowledge of the topic that we're going to share. But you'll find Eric all across the state of Tennessee with he and his team in schools, helping you understand what the ProEd benefits are and the benefits of being not only a member of the association, but the benefits that you can extend to your family as well. And some of those advantages of having association member benefits advisors, along with professional educators of Tennessee, is that they help fill those gaps that may not be covered by your district benefits, things that maybe the district doesn't offer or used to offer in the past. You can have access to those as well. They're portable. If you leave your district for whatever reason, even if you leave the great state of Tennessee, those benefits go with you as long as you keep your relationship with ProEd. And you can extend these benefits to your parents and to your family members who may not be eligible for your district benefits. It could be a son or daughter who's maybe aged out of your district benefits, parents who have never had benefits through you as well. And so with proper planning with Eric and his team, you can make sure that you've got access and it can extend your ProEd benefits out to your family members that may keep you from having to take time off to take care of a loved one, or maybe cut your career short and stunt your pension as a result of having to take care of a family member. But today we're going to talk about a particular emergency transportation issue that's kind of unique and acute in the state of Tennessee. And unfortunately, it's been kind of spreading across the country. We're going to talk about that and go through our steps and talk a little bit about, first of all, the golden hour. Define that golden hour for you. Our goal today is that you walk away understanding what the golden hour means, help identify some of the issues and costs related to emergency transportation for medical needs in the state of Tennessee. We're going to locate and identify where those level 1 and the level 2, the best trauma centers in the state. And Eric's going to kind of share with us kind of his thoughts and what he's seen for those of you who live in the rural parts of the state as well. We're going to talk about the myths and realities behind what your district insurance may or may not pay, what Medicare may or not pay for your parents, things like that, so that you can have peace of mind to take advantage of the best endorsed options that you have through ProEd of Tennessee. So let's jump right in. When we talk about emergency medical issues, the golden hour is a term that was coined by Dr. R. Adams Crowley. He's a teaching physician up in the Northeast. Some people think the concept kind of bubbled up out of the World War I battlefields in France, but it basically says that hour immediately after a traumatic event, could be an accident, could be a stroke, a heart attack, something like that, in which medical treatment is done to prevent irreversible internal damage and optimize the chance of survival. During that first hour, that's the most effective time. And so what hospitals, communities have done is they've really improved their emergency medical transportation and their response times so that they can maximize that golden hour, meaning get you to a hospital quickly, or while you're being transported in an ambulance, an air ambulance, something like that, you can start to receive medical services right away. Well, that golden hour is so crucial to people getting back up on their feet, the survivability, the improvability of their internal damage, that as counties and communities have put these things together, costs have gone up dramatically. And so I pulled some headlines out of local Tennessee papers, off of TV stations, national news, things like that, talking about ambulance bills and how they're getting so high, even though people have insurance coverage. And not only is it just ground ambulance transportation, it's air ambulance transportation. It's going up across the board. And what happens is most people think, well, I've got insurance coverage. So when I need to call an ambulance, my insurance is going to pay for that. Unfortunately, we're going to, as we explore this conversation a little bit further today, surprise bills pop up all the time from ambulance providers because they don't participate in any networks. And so there's a cry out there for protection. The federal government has responded with a particular surprise billing act that's out there. We're going to talk about that and help you understand what is available out there to you and how it impacts you. Just a quick look at first about who needs medical transportation. Usually it's people over the age of 65. However, we're seeing people younger and younger all the time due to accidents and falls and things like that, needing some type of emergency medical transportation. And the top 5 reasons that people need that emergency transportation: number 1, heart attack and stroke, regardless of age. And number 2, not too far behind, is a traumatic incident like an accident or a fall, something of that nature. Then you have neurological disorders, respiratory distress, and we're going to lump COVID into that respiratory distress because in the past couple of years, we have seen a significant amount of individuals have to be transferred 1 or even 2 times because of COVID via emergency transportation. So it really gets to be a situation out there. And depending upon the nature of that situation, the crucial timing element of the accident, stroke, heart attack, or something like that, or because of the distance from different transportation, from different emergency transportation and emergency centers, the level of trauma care that you receive is greatly impacted based on what's close to you. All trauma centers, all emergency rooms are rated in a level 1, 2, or 3, or 4 level. The level 1 trauma centers are the best of the best. The teaching hospitals, most of the time major metropolitan areas tied in with the college, where they've got not only the best equipment, but they've got the scope of facilities, the size to handle multiple traumas, and they've got the specialists that are around the clock there, especially pediatric specialists or specialists in certain other rare cases or internal damage. As you go down the scale, level 2, not as many specialists, maybe not available 24/7, things like that. Then down to level 3, level 4, what I call doc in a box type situations, really designed to get you stabilized and then move you on to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center. The facts are, the further you live away from a hospital that provides major trauma care, the more expensive your transportation is going to be, not only because it may be miles away, but you may have to take 2 different medical trips, and those costs can add up. So let's take a look a little bit more acutely at Tennessee. There are 172 hospitals in the state of Tennessee. There are only 5 level 1 trauma centers in the state. You see those in that top graphic up there, scattered throughout the major metropolitan areas throughout the state there. Then you only have 2 level 2 trauma centers that are in the state. So you see there's a lot of counties out there and ground to cover that don't have a level 1 or level 2 trauma center. Last year, there were 21,000 emergency transportation trips to trauma centers in the state of Tennessee. Eric, I want you to unmute there for a moment and talk about how COVID has impacted the need to move around more frequently with an ambulance or an air ambulance.
Well, John, what you mentioned is so true. COVID has just been a total game changer. It's almost like throw all your stats out the window about accidents because COVID really wreaked havoc on the medical industry over the last couple of years. We saw more individuals having to be life flighted, level 1 trauma situations because of respiratory issues from hospital to hospital because the beds were full. And that golden hour you were talking about became so critical to get individuals transported from point A to point B. And of course, being familiar with UT Medical Center in Knoxville, Tennessee, is a very, very major player as a level 1 trauma center, as is Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville. But just to put it in perspective, if you lived more in a rural area, and you needed assistance or you needed to be transported, the ground ambulance is not going to be your friend, because you could be miles and miles away from that type of assistance when we're talking about a life or death situation where the only recourse and the only opportunity for survivability is medical air service. And just to put it in perspective, as far as cost, the average cost that we saw for a transport was $36,000. And what we saw with your major medical provider or even Medicare was a fraction of that expense being paid, to the tune of $3,600 to $6,000, which means you're left with a pretty significant outlay of expenditures. And the beauty behind those individuals that had the medical transport program that's provided for the members was the peace of mind of knowing that whatever that outstanding bill was that was sent to me from my provider, all I had to do was to forward that over to the provider that I took this plan out with. And guess what, John? That bill was paid 100%. So knowing that and having that peace of mind really puts it in perspective of how valuable this type of program is. And if I may indulge you just for, if you could indulge me just for another moment, it's not just because of COVID. There's a county in Tennessee called Humphreys County that we had the opportunity to visit maybe about 3.5 months ago, and they had a massive flood. And medical transport was utilized, and teachers talked about having the massive plan because it was very helpful with the flooding of the buildings, and it did so much damage. It was all on the news in that particular county. It was unbelievable, but that's a testament of how beneficial a plan like this can be, even in a catastrophe in a rural area like Humphreys County. So I think what we do as ambassadors or representatives for ProEd goes beyond just the membership aspect, but it also goes to the point of making sure that our educators have plans in place that can be beneficial for them and their families, not just while they're working, but into their retiring years as well.
Exactly. Thank you, Eric. I'm going to have you come back and talk a little bit more about that when we get to talking about the MASSA program. But I appreciate you kind of setting up this situation, because people often think, I've got insurance. I've got insurance through my district or through my spouse's plan, or if I'm on Medicare, because we have some retirees that join us on these calls, that I've got coverage. Yes, you do have coverage, but most policies will only cover usual and customary charges. And then the language is a little tricky, whether it's a Medicare language or whether it's your insurance policy through the district, because there is a certain schedule of benefits, a usual and customary charge that your insurance company will allow to reimburse that provider, that ambulance, that air ambulance, the helicopter, life flight, whatever you want to call it. Anything that goes above and beyond that schedule, we're responsible. You're responsible for the difference there. And then to top that off, depending upon the seriousness of the medical condition, or whether or not your insurance company or Medicare on the back end says, you could have been taken by an Uber or by your family member to the hospital, they may not cover it at all. But when you need medical care or somebody finds you, they don't know what your condition is. They don't know if you need an ambulance or not. But on the back end, the hospital can make the determination, or the insurance company can make the determination whether you need the transportation or not. Then that kind of puts you at alert. So the bottom line, even if you have insurance, there's an exposure, there's a cost that's out there. I want to show you a couple of bills here in a moment and show you some of these things.
John, before you get in depth, I want to give a real life situation. We had a teacher that had what she thought was a medical emergency. So the ambulance was called and she was transported to the hospital. When she filed her claim and they received the bill, $0 was paid. And the reason why was because what she thought was a heart attack, or what the family members thought was a heart attack, was a tachycardia. Mimics a heart attack, a little bit above indigestion, but it was not a heart attack. And so when that claim was filed, it was denied because individuals aren't doctors, but the fact of the matter is if you feel it's a medical emergency or somebody else does, that's the first thing that's going to happen is ambulance is going to be called. So that's just a prime example of what's denied, like you said, with the individuals that take a look and see, hey, was this medically necessary to be able to file this claim?
Exactly. And I'll give you an example that happened to me personally. My son was in the 6th grade playing Pee Wee football, looked up, he was laying flat on the ground out there and couldn't move. And the facility called an ambulance on his behalf to protect themselves. They strapped him to a gurney, hauled he and my wife off to a hospital. Come to find out it was just severe cramps, thank the Lord. But the hospital did their IV stuff, all that kind of stuff. Insurance company came back and said $1,500 for the ambulance wasn't going to be covered because it wasn't necessary for somebody with cramps to go to the hospital. So if you've got children that play sports, those sports facilities are going to be ultra conservative to protect themselves, but we're still responsible as parents for that bill if the insurance company says it wasn't necessary for you to be transported. And the Kaiser Family Foundation did a study here not too long ago that found out that over half of the ambulance transportation bills result in a surprise bill on top of what you were expecting. Some states, more than 2/3 of the ambulance providers are not part of any network. And so you're going to get out of network billing. Tennessee, it's closer to 60-65% that's in there. So just a little bit short of 2/3. And the law that the federal government passed back in January, or went into place back in January, the No Surprises Act, which says that you can't be surprised with balanced billing, doesn't even cover ground ambulance transportation. So it didn't even address what a lot of the people were looking for. The fact is you can be on the hook for significant amount of money for ambulance bills. And then, as I mentioned, more and more providers, ambulance providers, whether it be a private company, a county, something like that, they are staffing up with EMTs and paramedics to try to keep that golden hour special to take care of you. Certain basic life support and advanced life support procedures are not covered by insurance. Basic life support is usually covered by most insurance carriers and by Medicare. CPR, ventilation, bandaging, splinting, if you're having a baby, that kind of stuff, just making sure that you're okay to get to the hospital. If you have to have advanced life support or a paramedic that rides along with you, those things that we think are usually billed by the hospital, that's billed by that provider of that transportation. Medicare doesn't pay for that at all. Private insurance can say it may or may not be covered. So again, it's important to understand just the transportation cost is one thing. I'll show you here in a moment. The care while you're in the transportation can be another thing that can cost you as well there. Here are some examples. And I know living in the state of Tennessee, depending on where you live, there could be miles and miles and miles before you get to an emergency room. Here's one at the top, 20-mile transportation. Just to start the ambulance, $1,300. 20 miles transportation, $420. $1,300 is what this individual is responsible for themselves after the insurance company paid their portion out of their pocket. Only going 9 miles, still, even after insurance pays $400 and something, a little over $1,000 responsibility. Then you get up into just 4 miles. I mean, just going not even across the street almost can run a $1,300 bill. So whether you go 90 or 9 miles, it doesn't matter. A significant portion is usually left upon us as individual payers to do that. Now you get down as to Eric talked about. You get into some of those more rural parts of the state where you're not as close to a trauma hospital. You're up vacationing over in Pigeon Forge out up there in the Smokies, something like that happens to you, you fall and break a leg. You're talking an air ambulance ride. This is an example out in California, great provider, Blue Cross Blue Shield, as far as an insurance company, just to turn that helicopter on was $33,000. 25-mile flight, another $7,400. Then you see all of the different medical things that they did within that particular flight. Those expenses add up to close to $42,000. Blue Cross played a good chunk of that, which is incredible that they paid $33,000. That still left the individual with an $8,000 bill. $8,000 that we weren't expecting on vacation, $8,000 that somebody woke up that morning and didn't expect to be responsible for. And so thankfully, PET and ProEd has stepped up to provide a solution for you, because we can't prevent the bad things, but we can always be prepared when they do happen to us. And that solution is MASSA. It's called Medical Air Services Association. Don't think about it just as an air service provider, but it's any ground, any air, anywhere. And MASSA is a company that has been around for 47 plus years. There are over 2 million members, and I'm going to hit on that word member here in just a moment and tell you why that's important. They have a stellar rating with the BBB, very strong. They have not only their own staff, they work with other staffs as well. So depending on where you travel, where you go, but they work with all ambulance providers all across the country. And there is no limit to the amount of protection that you have. Meaning that if you saw some of those bills and you were responsible for $1,000, it wouldn't matter. If you're responsible for $8,000, it wouldn't matter. You're covered 100% with MASSA. Now, give you a couple of testimonials and let you think about this in terms of where you live, in terms of where you may travel now that we're getting back on the road again and traveling after COVID. This is from an individual who lives in a suburb of Fort Worth. So think of a suburb outside of Nashville, something like that. And this individual had a heart attack, I believe is what it was, or a stroke, was having a stroke, but it was right around rush hour. So the hospital couldn't dispatch an ambulance in time to get him taken care of. So they had to fly just a few miles to get over and land in his front yard, land in the street out there to pick him up and take him back to the hospital because of traffic. It was a $25,000 bill to do that. Saved his life because it got to him quickly. MASSA paid 100% of that. There was no expense out of their pocket. They could spend their time, their effort recovering from their procedure, not worrying about it. So the small investment that they made to purchase a MASSA membership paid off big time for this individual. Now here's a teacher that likes to travel during the summer. And she was traveling down to Mexico, going up on those pyramids that they have down in Mexico, where she fell and broke her leg severely. Was having a difficult time in a Mexican hospital getting her legs set properly so that she could even be transported somewhere else. She called MASSA. MASSA dispatched an airplane to pick her up to provide in-air services and get her back to her home in Denver to make sure that she regained use of her leg. She had to have multiple surgeries, multiple fractures to get repaired on her leg. Because MASSA was able to dispatch an air ambulance quickly to her to get her back to the States to get repaired, she's able to travel again. She's able to have use of her leg again. So it's not only around the corner, it's around the world that you have this coverage that's available to you, and it can protect you as well. And MASSA is a membership. It's a supplement to your medical insurance or to Medicare, or whatever health insurance that you have, that gives you that financial peace of mind, that financial protection that for any life-saving emergency transportation, anywhere in the world, you've got 100% protection. And don't think necessarily just about your protection. I'm going to have Eric jump in and share a couple of examples here in a moment. Think about your family that you may be traveling with. Think about where you may be, because there are so many things that MASSA does for you. I'll run down this list, and then I want Eric to kind of share some examples that he's seen. MASSA will provide for you, when you're a member, emergency air transportation, be it fixed wing, be it a helicopter, ground ambulance transportation, repatriation, meaning bringing you back to the States if necessary, return transportation for those traveling with you. Say you go down to Disney World with your kids or your grandkids and you have something happen to you, they'll bring your minor children back home. They'll escort you back if you can't take care of yourself, bring your car back, things like that. Worldwide coverage, things of that nature. Eric, you want to share an example that you've had with one of your clients?
Yes, probably have a couple. One that really sticks out was one of my teachers who had a son that went active duty. He stayed for 4 years right out of high school. So when he got out of the military, he was only 22 years of age, still lived with his mother. And the next year, and she had MASSA, and the next year though, he decided to go to Europe for a reunion with some buddies because he was stationed in Germany. Unfortunately, when he was there, he was hit and fatally, it was a fatal accident. He was struck by a car and passed away. He was in Germany. Because of the fact mom had MASA, they transported the body back home. Now, I know all too well, tragic in and of itself, but I also know the difficulties when you're in another country, what can happen, because I lost an aunt on a mission trip in Jamaica where she was struck by a taxi and passed away. And it took a tremendous amount of time to get her body returned back to Georgia. But in this case with MASA, they actually returned the body back home in pretty quick time at no cost to the mother because she had the MASA plan. If you think about it, the thousands of dollars she would have had to pay on her own had she not had that in place. Traumatic in and of itself. The second example that really resonated with me was the organ retrieval or the organ recipient transportation. And this is the first time it ever happened, because you hear about organ retrieval or organ recipient, don't really think a lot about it. But I did have a teacher whose husband was on to be a donor for a new liver. And what wound up happening was they received a phone call that a match had been found. And what happened was when they got the phone call, they called me and wanted to know what to do. And I mentioned about their air transport through MASA to give them that call. So we got on a three-way call, long story short, and they made arrangements to fly him to the state where the surgery was done on their jet at no cost to him and the family, because that's part of their benefit. But it's the first time I've ever had a situation where a member had to use the organ transportation benefit. And once the surgery and everything was done and he recuperated, he and his wife were flown back home at no cost. So there are real benefits you cannot put a dollar value on in this particular plan. We have individuals that travel all the time with grandchildren, minors. The program, if you're in the hospital because of an illness or an accident and you have children with you or grandchildren that are minors, MASA will literally fly them back home with an escort, right back to their state. And even if it was someone in the hospital that had orders written from their doctor that said, hey, John, Eric, they need to be transported back to their state where their doctors can take the best care of them, they can give them the best service, MASA will literally fly them back to their area of residence so they can be taken care of by their doctors. And so the benefits in this are so many to name, John. It's not even funny. A lot of people travel with their pets, believe it or not. If you're in a hospital in another state, they'll return your pet back home. So, I mean, it's a lot of thought went into this program when it was designed. You have other carriers that you have to jump through hoops to be able to get approved. You have to call ahead of time for some companies to get approval just to use their plan. If you're not a certain period, so many miles away, or they won't even provide ground, but they only do air, they can only use their fleet. MASA says use any service that's going to allow you to be taken care of. And if it's a situation where there's a problem, give us a call. And then, of course, filing a claim is very simple. I mean, literally, there's no claim form. All you have to do is just policy number on your outstanding bill that you have to pay out of pocket, send it directly to them, and they'll take care of it from there.
Exactly. So it's really important to understand that this is a membership that's a supplement to your insurance plan.
Yes.
And as Eric mentioned, it is beyond what we think of normal coverage. It's more than just those transportation bills I showed you. It's that peace of mind that if you are traveling with family, with young kids, transportation, repatriation, moving that vehicle back, if you drove somewhere, if you're going somewhere in another part of the world, they've got specialized teams that they can mobilize in your part of the world and know where you are and fly you out quickly. So, I mean, there's so many different benefits that come along with this. And I'm gonna have Eric come back in a moment and just kind of answer a couple of questions about who is eligible, what constitutes a family, things like that as well, because there are some special benefits. Again, this is a ProEd benefit for you. you can purchase the MASA program out on the open market. However, because you're a member of ProEd, you get a significant 40% discount off of all different levels of membership, and I'll show you that. And because it is a membership program, the general public pays a membership fee. Your membership fee is waived. And as Eric mentioned as well, there's no claim paperwork, 24/7 support. It is so simple and easy to use. It gives you peace of mind before you ever do anything. Even if you never travel, you've got peace of mind. If something happens and you need medical transportation, you've got coverage. But after the fact, the ease of use, the ability to take care of it, and the fact that you're a member of ProEd and part of the MASA family and the AMBA family, we can advocate for you on your behalf as well. This is what the different membership options look like. For a single individual, it's $27 a month. For a family, it's $35 a month. You have a 5-year and a lifetime option that are a little bit different. So Eric, kind of define who is a family. Who would a family be for a membership? And then what would it be like if I had grandkids?
Very good question. As it relates to family, family is going to be husband and wife, a mother and children, husband, wife, and children. And John, you bring up the fact about grandchildren. If you have guardianship papers for any minor, they also qualify as family as well. And they're covered up to age 26, which is really great. Individuals, John, can literally take this plan out as members of ProEd on their grandparents, on their parents, at the same discounted rate that's available to them as a member. So it's almost as if you're extending your member benefits to other family members. And that's what members that become part of this need to be aware of. And one thing I want to mention, we hear from time to time is, well, I don't travel a lot, Eric. I don't know if this is beneficial for me. Well, here's some things to think about. Do you have children that have recently started driving? Do you have children that have recently gone off to college? Accidents happen a lot of times, and it's not the fault of our children, but it could be the individual they were with. So that just gives you a little more peace of mind knowing that that benefit, that type of coverage is extended beyond just that. And if it's not an accident, it could be an illness. It just like John mentioned, it could be a medical emergency. And you hear so often about children that have asthma attacks and things of that nature. And we're moving into spring, which will be summer, and the pollen is high. So those type of things you don't think about until an event takes place.
Exactly. So again, you see this pricing here. I'm going to show you a little bit how to get a hold of information about that shortly. One thing I want to point out, there's a benefit that's additionally and above for those who take out a 5-year and a lifetime membership. Either one of those, you get an ID bracelet that has your information. And Eric and his team are very particular about making sure how you plug that in, get that taken care of. So if you've got medical conditions, if you've got notification of next of kin, if you've got information about your doctor or any allergies, things like that, medical professionals are trained to look for some type of ID bracelet, something like that. They can scan that, your records will be there, and they can already radio that ahead to the hospital. They can have contact information as necessary, things like that. They take care of the contact with MASA and with the hospital.
So this is a lifesaver right here. This is a lifesaver for those individuals, John, that take out these particular plans because they can be allergic to certain types of medications. And when the EMT scans that bar, like you said, it will show everything that will pop up on their medical history, allergies, and things of that nature. So it's really a valuable tool for those individuals that have the multi-year, 5-year, or lifetime plan. Very good.
Exactly. Point. And you can take that little clip off there, that little silver part, put it on your Apple Watch band. You don't have to wear this band. So I mean, there's other ways that you can keep this on you in whatever manner that you wish. It gives you that extra level of protection, that extra layer with 5-year and lifetime membership options out there. So what I want to do, if you're interested in this and have questions about it, I encourage you to get a hold of us in 2 different ways. You can take your smartphone, open up your camera feature, hover over that QR code, and that QR code will pop up a little form. It'll say MASA, or Medical Air Services Association. You can check that box. You can check anything else that you want to, fill out your information. It will come back to us. Eric and his team will get in contact with you. If you don't have your phone with you, don't have access to scanning it, my email address is down there. It's john.green@amba.info. will be glad to answer any question that you have about this. I'll bring this QR code back up in a moment. Just a couple of quick reminders. We do have another webinar coming up at the middle of April about the true cost of cancer, where we're going to dig in a little bit deeper and show you from a perspective of an active educator what your insurance plans cover for cancer, heart attack, and stroke, and what they don't cover, so that you can go in wide-eyed knowing what you've got on that. And then tell your friends and coworkers about these webinars from PET. ProEd places so much of their emphasis on your own professional and personal development. This is a great way to introduce people who aren't members, coworkers who are not members of PET, to what the services that PET provides for them on their behalf. It'll get them involved in these webinars as well. So I will leave this up here. Eric, before we sign off, is there anything else that you want to share based on your experience with the MASA program that could benefit our viewers today?
The only thing I'd say that I can add more to is literally everyone needs to have a plan like this. The thousands of dollars it can save you out of pocket are enormous. And all it takes is for you to have to use this one time to realize the value behind it. If we're dealing with an accident, John, I always say it's not if, but when. And so, medical emergencies happen all the time. As time goes by and we have more birthdays, things just start to happen. So it's kind of either one or the other at some point in time, but is a very, very valuable benefit to have for you and your families, that if you're an active teacher, you're not going to get this type of benefit through the school system, because this isn't a type of benefit that's offered. But it's amazing that ProEd has endorsed such an important plan, that they see such value in it for their members. So we're just really excited to be a part of it and share this valuable information to those individuals that are looking for this type of opportunity.
Absolutely. Eric, thank you for joining us today, being our co-host. And again, if you have any questions, my email is down here. You can use that QR code, but Eric and his team will be contacting you in the state of Tennessee. So Eric, thank you for your service up there. ProEd, thank you for offering these programs. And if you have any questions, feel free to use those QR codes or my email address. Thank you again for joining us on the Professional Educators of Tennessee webinar series. We hope you enjoyed it today and hope you learned something. So have a great rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.
And go Vols.
There you go. Thanks, Eric.